appreciative of the die-hard fans who come to the pre-concert conversation, because not everyone does that. So hello to those of you I don't know, which is probably just 2 or 3 people I can pick out. My name is Jude Dashi. I'm the director of the Evolution series, and I'm very pleased to have with me Loadbang here, Jeff Gavett, baritone, Carlos Cordeiro, bass clarinet, Andy Kozar, trumpet, and Will Lang on trombone. So welcome to Baltimore.
Thanks, thank you.
And I've already gotten to chat with them a little bit. I always get the pleasure of kind of taking the band to dinner and finding out what they're all about. But we want to let you guys in on some of that. One of the funny things always for me is that we didn't meet until yesterday. Andy and I have been corresponding for maybe 2 years. And this happens a lot where I hear from a group, and in your case, I think I had heard of Loadbang. I was really curious about the name, which I think we'll talk about a little bit. But yeah, we had this long correspondence. We just met yesterday, and I've really enjoyed my limited interaction with these guys. Over dinner, we talked about the Beach Boys, we talked about football, we talked about 80s and 90s TV. And then I got to sit and chaperone a rehearsal at Peabody. I had to keep an eye on the room, so they were in one room, and then I was sitting next to the room, and then across from me was a rehearsal for Monteverdi's In Coronation of Popea. So I had music from 2011 to 2013 in one year, and I had music from the 1600s in the other year, and I was somewhere in the 1800s in the middle. But I thought we would start by talking about something that I realized that was kind of almost embarrassing about the Evolution series, which is here we are in season 9, and these are the first 2 brass players we've had on the series. So first of all, I want to apologize. I'm sorry. But you guys are the first, which is exciting. And I guess I thought we could talk a little bit about your instrumentation, how it came to be, and because it's probably the most unusual one we've had on the series. And we talked a little bit the other night about how it compares to typical contemporary music instrumentation. So, what do you guys think? Yeah.
So we were all at Manhattan School of Music together. In fact, we had an original bass clarinetist, but all of our bass clarinetists have been through Manhattan School, which has been fun. And Andy, Jeff, and I were in what was called the Contemporary Performance Program. I guess it's still called that. Yeah. And we were in the flagship year of that program, where they brought in a bunch of us through audition to have a new music masters, which was really one of the first of its kind in the country.
And this was started by Peabody's former director and then Manhattan's director, right?
Robert Cerrone, who did a great job and went to bat for us and really got our program started off on the right foot, which was very nice of him. And Andy and I actually ran a small concert series on our own, where we just played 20-minute concerts every Tuesday night in an abandoned library that was at Manhattan School, which was also our rehearsal space. Remember that? Yeah, it was so abandoned that I once fell through the floor there.
Trombone in hand.
Yeah, trombone in hand, but it all ended up being okay.
Yeah.
So
during a concert?
No, just walking around.
Just
It's like all of us were there almost. So during one of our first concerts, I think it was maybe the 3rd or 4th concert even, we had an April Fool's concert where 4 of us got together, our original bass clarinetist and the rest of us, and did barbershop quartets, an original piece that Jeff wrote, a great piece called Death, which was actually a lot of fun. Who did the text for that? Was that Borges?
No, I can't remember. It's a French surrealist whose name
It's a French surrealist. It's a really cool piece.
Set as barbershop.
Yeah.
Just want to remind
that was
everyone.
for the instrumentation. Then we did 2 barbershop quartets, which no one will ever hear again. And we did some graphic scores by Morton Feldman.
Earl Brown, December
Earl Brown.
1952.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
And we were all really good friends, really good drinking buddies, friends, colleagues. So we decided to make it a group and have more people write for us. And then Loadbang was born. Well, the name was born about a little later.
So there was no repertoire. There was nothing.
No,
right? No. So first concert, what did you play?
That was the Stone?
The Stone.
August?
I think we were very fortunate when we started. Jeff and I had just finished at the Bang in a Can Summer Festival up in Massachusetts, where David Lang, who had just won the Pulitzer right before that, I think. He was teaching up there, and we had bugged him about writing a piece for us with no money, and we had just started. We were just 4 people who had a name now.
No, it was actually, I had emailed him about, I had sung several of his pieces at the Bang in a Can Summer Festival, Banglewood. And it's not its actual name, but it's its better name.
Yeah.
And they were for like piano, percussion, and cello, and they were like sort of bigger ensemble pieces. And I sent him an email asking basically if I could have his permission to just do those pieces again at Manhattan School. And he was like, "Oh, sure. Like who's gonna be playing with you? I'll do an arrangement." So
It
I
doesn't
said,
happen
"Well,
every day
it's
for a
yeah.
recent Pulitzer Prize winner with
Yeah,
70
so he
commissions
was
coming
like-
in.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So he just he did an arrangement of his version of "Waiting for the Man," this Velvet Underground tune, and that was on our first. Was that our first concert
Mhm.
outside of the school?
It was
First
that
full
concert.
Yeah.
It was a piece of mine. We did yours.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we did your clock, your stopwatch piece.
We did some improvising.
Reading out of books, tearing paper.
We're probably
Marvelous,
forgetting.
it was marvelous.
We're probably forgetting something, but so it was a very sort of do-it-yourself concept. Like we
Mhm.
were all writing because there wasn't the repertoire. We were all writing for the group in addition to some friends that were writing on Yaju.
Yeah.
Did Ronan write a piece for us? We had Yaju Yang, who was a great composer at Manhattan School, wrote us a really nice piece that helped us get started. And Ronan Shai, who was an Israeli-born composer. I'm not sure, did he go back?
He's still in New York.
He's still in New York?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah, but he wrote us a couple of pieces too. So we're very fortunate having some of our colleagues write strong works for us to get started.
Back to the brass thing, Carlos, bass clarinet is all over contemporary music, so that's, and I'm gonna ask these guys about their side projects, because they're all in other groups. And you've sung plenty of new music, but what had you been in other ensembles, like new music groups, small new music groups, like not chamber orchestras, but I'm curious, what place you found as brass players, and is this your first sort of small ensemble gig doing new music?
Doing
Yeah,
new music?
we both played in brass quintets, so it's sort of
Right.
like what you do as
Yeah.
a brass player.
Right,
But,
yeah.
it's like being a string player. You play in string quartets. It's
Mhm.
part of what you do. But this is for me. This is the first small group, especially that I'm sort of intimately involved in the running of the organization
Mhm.
with these other guys. That I think this is the first group like that I work with as a brass player.
What about you?
Yeah, as far as full-time working, I played in a trombone quartet in my undergrad that did some new pieces and some nice arrangements of like Shostakovich string quartets and stuff. But it was actually, the only other thing I could think of is during the first concert of our program and the master's program, there was a piece by Lucas de Groot
Yeah.
that was actually for baritone, bass clarinet, and trombone,
Yeah.
called Skimbleshanks, the Railway Cat.
Yeah.
It's one of the few pieces that exists that can possibly fit into our repertoire.
Yeah.
We just did it the one time.
Yeah. Haven't brought
One thing we were talking about the other day is that now Manhattan School, which has this great program, you told me that now they only focus on the Pierrot ensemble,
I believe that's what the
Which is
the focus is now.
Yeah.
for people who aren't familiar, flute, clarinet, piano, violin, and cello, with or without percussion or singer.
Right.
Yeah.
But now that's kind of been the default, for better and worse, I think, as we discussed. It's become kind of a catch-all contemporary ensemble, and you think now that's kind of what this group wouldn't have formed today.
No,
They
I
haven't
mean,
had
they
brass
wouldn't have been
players
able to
since
go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're the only brass players that have been through it. They've
Yeah.
had other brass players
Interesting.
that have auditioned, but it just hasn't worked out yet. What's nice is that since we're in the position we are, down the road we can look towards maybe coming back into the fold there and promoting what we do, or teaching at our own schools, or doing our own outreach. And speaking as brass players, since that's the question that comes up, we like to show that trumpet and trombone can be just as varied, just as colorful, play just the same types of minimalist music or non-minimalist music.
Play just as soft.
Yeah, play just as soft as clarinet. Something that was the hardest thing to work on, but it's doable. And we can kind of promote brass and new music down the road.
How did the name come up? Tell everyone
Um,
the birth of the name, because to me it's really, that doesn't leave you. I mean, once you emailed me, I was asking everyone, tell me more about this.
I'll
group.
explain half of it and have Carlos explain the other
One
half
of my
it.
interns downstairs, Wesley, taking tickets that her mother emailed her when she saw the Facebook post. Said, "What is this Loadbang?" Like you guys,
We're dangerous.
Really, yeah, a lot of problems.
Watch
yeah.
out. Well, we were in our first year at school. We were studying electronic music, and part of the sort of one of the most important suites of software that you work with if you work with music that's with live electronics is something that comes out of IRCAM, which is the French state electronic music studio. It's a program called Max MSP, or it's sort of two programs. And we got the name from that because we were working it. And Carlos can explain what it is. And
Max MSP it's an object-oriented program. It means that it has by default some objects that have some functions, and one of them is Loadbang. That what Loadbang does is when you start the program, it makes it run. So it's like the start engine of the program. So that's the Loadbang.
Were there other names kicked around, or was this the immediate
This was
winner?
sort of it.
Uh-huh.
I think we had tossed around some that we got rid of very quickly.
Yeah.
This had sort of stuck.
Which you don't want to share here.
No, they're not shareable.
How many
Those are involved.
how many people know what the name is all about when you play a new music concert? How many people know what that
It
is?
sort of depends.
for?
I think when we do work at universities, often university
Right.
composers,
they'll
especially,
be like, is that from Max MSP?
and they get
So
super
it
excited.
brings the
It's
insiders.
it's a shibboleth.
Right. And we have T-shirts that have been made that we're plug ready. We're going to be selling after the show.
Okay.
That are,
So everyone can ask you. So now you all know how to define.
It's our name.
Yeah.
It's our name, Loadbang, but it's also done in the object so exactly the way it looks in the software,
So
which
Yes.
they were gracious enough to let us do.
Yeah, the company Cycling 74 gave us permission to use the name and the logo. They were very nice.
So it's musical geeking out to the highest.
To the highest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
And there's no website on it or anything, so it's just like an inside joke. You get to be part of an inside joke.
Don't tell anyone who doesn't come to the talk. When the rest of them come in, that's it. One of the things you've heard the guys allude to so far, and I think this is a first also for any ensemble we've brought in. They are all composers, and in fact, not only are they all composers, but you said that when Carlos joined the group, like that was kind of a stipulation. You wanted to stay all
Yeah.
composers, right? There
Yep.
was-
Or at least
Yeah.
that's an element of the work that we do in our musical lives. Like,
Yeah. Well, talk about, I don't know, for each of you, for the group, what place that occupies for you, and I'd also love to get into sort of how improvisation fits into that for you, because I know that's a big part of what you do.
Yeah, I'll start. So I try and compose at least a little every day. I don't think of...
You just put all the full-time composers in the room to shame.
I said I try. I didn't say that I necessarily do. But I try and get in just at least a little bit every day, and I'm always singing and playing piano, and I improvise with these guys, or I improvise just on the piano. I do arrangements, and I try and just sort of do a little bit of everything. Like that idea really appeals to me, to be able to be a flexible musician who, we're not, I feel like historically we're at a place where specialization is less important. I mean, even though we are like contemporary music players. But we play in orchestra, I sing in choirs, and I do Baroque music or whatever, but to be able to do a little bit of everything and to be able to understand all aspects of your art is really important to me.
And I do mostly electronic music, so meaning music with electronics, live instruments,
Mhm.
electronics, audience interaction. So I guess that was one of the things that they needed a tech guy. So yeah,
So
but no.
like I said yesterday, it's like the modern equivalent of you had the basement, everyone could rehearse in. So.
Yeah. No, but I mean, it's the same. The improvisation, the composing, trying out a little bit of everything. I guess that's it.
yeah, I am. It's lame to use the same answer, but
That's why I went first.
no, composing is something that's very important to me, and I love the idea of the composer-performer. Someone that, a performer that composes and a composer that performs. I think it equally informs both of those things. It certainly informs the way I write. I think I write knowing what it's going to feel like to perform it. And I don't know how much, I don't do it every day. I sort of do it in spurts. But I would say that it's maybe 15% of what I do.
Did all of you go to school, did all of you major in your instruments?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody actually pursued composition as a full-on degree?
No.
What about you, Laura?
Not me. These guys are all really good at working hard and plotting out their compositions, and and really having it done to like all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. I'm kind of the exact opposite. I just write very simple, maybe ambient might be the right word, but a lot simpler textures that have just been thoughts that have been percolating in my head for a couple of years. So my compositional style is I'll just think about something that sounded cool, stretch it out for a long time, and just like put it into motion, and then just see what comes out the other side. And that's a rare thing for me, but it's fun when it happens.
You guys, so Loadbang has played all of your music in one situation or another, yeah?
Yep, we did last January.
Mhm.
We did a Loadbang Plays Loadbang show. This year Will has a full show in December of his music that we're doing.
So he was being way too modest in his answer.
It's probably pretty rare, actually.
But yeah, so he's going to be writing a full program of music for us. We'll be doing it in an art gallery in Chelsea in a couple weeks.
And Loadbang has played a whole CD of your music.
And we did a major portion of a CD of my music that was released in January. And that's been a really good thing for me too, and for all of us, I think, is to have people that you're close to and writing music for those people, and you know sort of what their capabilities are, and also being fortunate to write for people that have very few limitations on the things that people can do. It's very liberating when you're writing music without having to worry about, can this person do it or can't they do it, or are they going to complain about having to do it? You know, it's nice to have people that are like gonna, so for instance, Jeff wrote us a piece. What was Proverbial, and was that 72?
It was 48 tones to the octave.
Yeah, so a 48 tone to the octave piece, which could be potentially problematic if you're writing it for just some group. But getting to like being aware
That could yield an angry email.
That could
or
yield,
response,
right.
yeah.
But doing that and knowing that it'll get played and get played well is fun.
So you guys really support each other in that sense too.
Yeah.
The band is
Yeah.
sort of supporting its resident composers that way.
It's a really good working ground for trying out experimental techniques and just really pushing limitations for all of us.
How does improv fit into it for you?
From the very beginning, improv was necessarily a huge part of what we did because there was no repertoire. So
Right.
our concerts were probably half and half, maybe at the very beginning. And actually recently we haven't been improvising in public a lot, maybe in the last two performances. But it's been an important part of how we find the sound of the group and how, as composers and as performers, because sort of exploring freely within the sounds of all the instruments and the way the instruments blend especially is something that I think we discovered through improvisation. And
And you must keep discovering new possibilities in terms of pairings and.
yeah, I think timbrally it's been probably the most, that's the way that I think it's been the most useful for us, is finding ways that these very disparate instruments find like the Venn diagram, the middle part of the Venn diagram of all these instruments. And as we've explored this in improvisation and worked with new composers, we found like there's sort of a sound of the group that's developed over the years that has been, we didn't tell composers write it like this, but it's come out.
I think that
way.
happens a lot, right? I mean, if you think of a lot of the major new music groups, they often sort of start out as a brand new, something contrasting with the established groups, and then suddenly, oh, this is the sound, this is the Loadbang
Right.
ethos.
Yeah.
That's a part of it, and we also try to make sure that we have a broad spectrum
Uh-huh.
of influences in the composers that we ask to write pieces for us also. Because that can be something that happens where we like to be, by composing through improvising and through the commission that we do, we like to maintain as open of a kind of horizon of what we could sound like.
We should talk about the commissions, because I think they've already mentioned David Lang, who I guess was commissioned in a sense, a free commission.
Free connection.
On the other hand, you guys have a big new commission from Charles Warrenan,
Yeah.
who couldn't be much further from David Lang on the stylistic map. So talk about, by now, you guys have their bio. It's like you've done like 70 premieres, 70 plus
Yeah.
more.
A lot of
We've
composers.
sort of lost count. We need to update
That's a good
that.
sign. So a lot of people want to write for you, and a lot of people, and we have David Smooke here, who has a piece on tonight's program. So talk a little bit about how this body of work has come together for you.
Sure, we've made a point from the beginning, I think, to not, what we noticed is with a lot of groups is that they sort of get pigeonholed, whether it's on purpose or not. And so when you hear a certain group, you think this is the kind of music.
Right. So
This is the
they
kind
play a lot of
music they play.
post-minimalist stuff. They play
Right.
a lot of, yeah.
And so we had sort of decided, because our tastes are varied, and there are a lot of possibilities with the ensemble, that we should be commissioning in a similar way. So when we do commissions, we basically, we just think of people that we like.
Is
The
there-
music
is-
that we think is interesting, and then we make sure that we're all unanimously,
Yeah.
Is there a wish list? Is there like a backlog that you guys maintain?
we put together, we update our wish list often.
Mhm.
Yeah, we have possible things on the horizon, so I'm not going to say who it is, obviously, because things would fall through if I mentioned anything. But we have plans
Rhymes
through
with-
to
yeah.
2017 of asking
Great.
people for, and making more big reach commissions, and
Yeah.
just thinking of people who, like, whose music do we like the best in the world? Like, who is the most interesting person writing music right now that we can ask?
We made the decision, and we sort of learned this with the Warren Commission, which we were very fortunate.
I mean, I can't emphasize enough to those who don't know him. That's a big deal, and he's also not a young composer. Like,
No.
he's not.
75 this year.
Yeah. So I mean, that's actually kind of. It's a funny thing to say, but that's kind of refreshing for a young rising group to be commissioning an established composer, because
Right.
you have a lot of people you're working with are younger names, emerging names.
Right.
So how did that come about?
We just all really like his music.
Uh-huh.
And Jeff and Will had performed a piece of his at Manhattan School that he came 2 years ago.
Okay.
And so we just decided we were going to ask. I mean, the worst thing we figured that could happen is that he could say no.
True.
So that's sort of been our thing too with a lot of composers now, as we're developing who we're going to be asking for pieces, is we don't even think about whether or not this person would say yes, or should we not even waste our time. We just ask. And in our experience, especially with like Warren and with David Lang, is they've said yes enough times to make us feel like we should keep asking.
Which is
people.
perpetuating. People want to write for you because they
Right.
see that happening.
And another part of it is if we can be so bold as to look forward to our legacy, the more big name composers that we can get, either when they're starting out or especially after they're established and they have such a strong voice like Charles Warren does, the better the likelihood is that other ensembles with our instrumentation take over for us, or
So the
Also
pieces
getting
have
some
a life beyond just Loadbang championing them.
yeah,
Yeah.
like speaking of brass, but for all of us, really, we'd like to show that this instrumentation is something that can become maybe not standardized, but can be approached by lots of different groups out there and lots of students, that they have more options
Mhm.
for
Yeah.
what they can do with their career.
You guys do a call, and we have a lot of young composers here. You do a call for scores, right?
Every year,
Yes,
yeah.
every year.
And how does that work? Tell me. Is it open to anybody?
It's
Anybody.
open to anyone. We actually got one from a high school kid this year, which was super exciting. And we've been doing it for the past 3 years or so, 4
Mhm.
years. And so it's a call for scores. It's a free call, so you don't have to pay or no submission fee or anything like that. And you send something, anything you want.
Which is a big deal in our world. That's a big deal, and that's not always true, and
Yeah.
there's a self-selection that goes on. A lot of composers, as the price goes up, say, you know what, I'm not gonna apply to this.
Right.
So,
Well, then I think it's more
Yeah.
interesting for us too, because we get such a wide variety of
Mhm.
people that are sending. So we have everything from students that are submitting, some college professors at different universities are submitting, and then we offer a modest commission, just based on what we're able to do to the person who wins the competition.
How many do you select? Just one?
We select one. This year we changed it up a little bit just because we felt there were 4.
Yeah,
Right.
we got an
We had a really hard
amazing
time.
group of
Yeah,
like
the last
really,
round was
really
hard.
solid pieces.
So we picked one, and then we sent the other 3 that we had really thought were fantastic, sort of, it's like an honorable mention of sort, but just basically expressing the fact that like you're someone that we would love to have the opportunity to work with at some point in the future.
That's awesome. So you create a pipeline also of composers who are gonna write for you, even the
Right.
people who don't win the competition.
And of the
Yeah.
people that, some of those people, we're getting pieces actually from 2 of those
Which is-
composers,
Right.
which is fantastic, yeah.
I wanted to ask you guys about, while they're here, we have this new partnership with the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra's ORCIDS program, which for those of you who don't know, is a community engagement program, I think one of the best in the country. modeled on the Venezuelan El Sistema education system, and it's just completely changing the way, not just the BSO, but Peabody as a music school, the way we engage with East and West Baltimore, and kind of change how Peabody feels and how it looks. And I think, so they're going out tomorrow. This is really our first collaboration with them. Loadbang is going out to Lockerman Bundy and working with, you're giving 2 short performances and then working with elementary school students. So, and another thing these guys already do, which is why I thought they'd be the perfect sort of first Orchids collaboration for us, is that they work with the New York Philharmonic's Very Young Composers program, right? So tell us what you do, and what's the age range, and what do you have the students do? What's it like?
Is this the 3rd year that we've done it?
This will be our third year.
Yeah, this will be our 3rd year working with them. So it's like it sounds, very young composers, so maybe 8 to 11 or 12?
A little older.
A little older?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
13, 14.
Oh,
It's
okay,
funny
13,
because if you
14
think
on the
about
top.
the way in contemporary music, a young composer is like 40.
Yeah.
So maybe a very young composer is
It's a very,
21.
very young composer, yeah.
But no, they really work with young
They're very
students.
Yeah,
young.
so
Middle and high school, is that
yeah, young high school kids.
Yeah.
And late elementary.
Late elementary.
late elementary
4th,
school?
5th grade.
And
Wow.
so
Yeah.
we come in and do a short performance and sort of just show the group to the kids. And then last year we had an extended residency, so we came in and got to work in small groups with the kids, telling them about our instruments and voice in my case, and about range and writing and notational standards for it. And the kids had assignments in the weeks between to write for the 2 instruments that they met with and learned about for the next time for us to come in and read, and then we swapped off and the kids talked to the other 2 of us. And then the idea was that then they would add in those instruments to the piece that they had started writing, so that by the end of it, they would have a piece for us to play. And we put on a concert of, how many, like a dozen?
Something like that, a bunch, yeah.
Yeah, like a dozen new pieces by these kids that, and some of them were really surprising. Like, you know, the fact that they don't really know anything yet is really an advantage in some ways. Like, the things that they would ask for are just, I mean, just really intriguing stuff. Like, this would be a good idea for like a big piece. Like, this is, some of the pieces you look at and you think, this is as good. And not saying anything bad about the undergraduate composers that we've worked in workshops, but some of these are as good as an undergraduate composer. Like, just the quality of the ideas with some of the kids. So it's
Can you think of a
super
specific
exciting.
example of something that really stood out to you?
What was on the last one? There was a really far out piece on the last concert that was sort of based around the board game Operation.
Yeah.
And the idea of like the buzzer.
Someone in 5th grade today still knows the board game Operation.
Yeah, that was the question we had too, but
Very, very retro elementary
yeah,
school.
but like the
Yeah.
buzzer sound from it or something. So there were these like just nasty multiphonic sounds and like, yeah, it was, the sound palette of it was so far out. It was like nothing else that we had. And there were some kids who have, you know, just really natural ears for like structure or like, you know, phrase structure in a way that it was really astonishing to see.
Were you guys sought out for this, or has this always been part of your mission as a group?
I think education has always been part of the mission of the group. Especially because we found like the younger kids really like it. They really like new music because they haven't, I don't think they have enough idea of what music is yet.
They haven't been educated out of liking it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they're always really wonderful and they ask fantastic questions, and it sort of seems silly to us that there's all of this, you know, like the New York Phil has their outreach program, but they're going in and they're doing classical music with the kids, which is fantastic. But if we're talking about wanting to build a community of people that are interested in listening to this, I think that it's important to start showing kids young as opposed to just expecting that they'll get introduced to Bach and then like somehow fall into Boulez or something. But with the New York Philharmonic,
Alphabetically.
That's about the only way. Yeah.
with the very young composers, that was actually, we were sought out for that by when Avery was there, right?
Right, yeah, a singer colleague of mine who also does a lot of new music was working as an assistant. So they have some like undergraduate or graduate composition students who assist with the kids and essentially look at their notation and like help them put their ideas into real notation rather than sort of like notes that go backwards and like float off the page because they're, you know, they don't know how to write music.
And we have a similar program at Peabody. The point is the ideas are there.
Yeah,
Right.
the ideas are all
there.
the kids, and the kids
Yeah.
put it all together, and the composers are just there to sort of like shepherd it into a way that is communicable.
I think we're going to stop the talk a little early this time because we have brass players, we have embouchures to worry about. These guys, I can't keep them up here talking till 5 minutes before. So I wanted to open it up to questions. If you guys have any questions for any members of the group about anything we've already talked about or things that we haven't mentioned.
Yes.
So, Carlos, you said that you like to include audience interaction.
Yes.
I was wondering if you could like talk about how that fits in some. I think that's pretty cool. So.
Well, it's it depends on the piece. It depends the place that you're doing. But you know, something from just putting sensors in chairs. You know, and like the noise that you do just by moving. You know, like that gets part in the piece. To interaction through web pages. So like, you know, you have a web page with a bunch of buttons and you'll have your smartphone. And people are on their phones anyway, so, you know, so.
We had, when Ice was here, Nathan Davis did his cell phone piece where everyone in the audience was kind of a participant in the
Right.
feedback around the room.
Right.
So, yeah, we've had stuff like that.
Yeah, so, you know, it's just like, for example, one of the pieces that it's going to be happening on November 4th is you can control, like everyone in the room can control the score of the musicians. So like, you know, like you choose like, I want the clarinet player to have, I don't know, a half note and then an eighth note. You put that and press send and it gets there. You know, stuff like that.
More power than a conductor.
You know, just ways to, also when the Loadbang played Loadbang, Jeff played Altoids and Wemos.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like stuff like that.
Other questions? Yes, Ben.
When you
I think he came with a list.
when you improvise together, what do you do for text, or do you not use text?
I usually don't use text improvising. I find that it's difficult to think of text in an improvisatory way. I think maybe just once or twice used like a poem that I had memorized, but then it feels contrived and it feels like you can't react in the same way that the instruments can because there's a narrative that you're making that's separate from the sound. So usually it's just making noises.
Yes, sir.
So what do you think about the balance between writing your own music and playing other people's music as far as the progression of your group?
I think as we've gone on, we've started to focus a little bit more on the commissions due to the level of composers that we're getting to work with. Getting to work with people like Charles Warren and such means that we really want to spend a lot of time getting those pieces into as much of a polished shape as we can before presenting it. And since we have this backlog of composers that we wish to work with in the future, we have to structure our concerts maybe a year in advance at this point. And we try to dedicate a concert or portions of concerts to our own pieces being played and replayed. But with the amount of pieces that we have and the work that we'd like to put into it to get it to a good place for all of you, it skews the balance a little bit at this point more towards the composers, I think.
Yeah.
But that might shift over time.
I mean, you must have put a lot of work, obviously, into doing Andy's CD. That's a lot of
That was a lot
a lot of his music to learn
Yeah.
and prepare.
Yeah.
Other comments, questions for these guys before we let them take a break?
We don't need so much of a break. You can ask more.
I don't know if he's speaking for the whole thing.
Are there any experimental techniques that y'all have worked with that we won't be getting to hear a sample of tonight?
Like all of them.
Yeah.
Most of them by fifth graders.
We were talking about this last night. Not on purpose, actually, just the way it worked out with some of the pieces that we've been playing a lot recently and that we wanted to put on this program to shape it. A lot of this stuff, I think our repertoire in general is unbelievably varied.
Yeah.
with the type of music.
I mean, it's very, just my experience of it, it's piece to piece, is a different
Totally
world.
different,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it is, all of the pieces tonight are very different. But I think this is more,
We're mostly like playing our
a
instruments.
lot of playing instruments.
Yeah, and I'm the only thing that's sort of far out. I mean, I'm going into sort of more of a pop world in the sound and some of it, but that's not an extended technique. That's like more familiar to most North American humans.
I think you'll hear in David's.
But I have to sing really high falsetto stuff in Hannah Lashes, and that's sort of a realm of a different realm of sound that Loadbang has explored, especially in Andy's mass.
We've found that a lot of composers have sort of exploited the fact that we all use air to produce sound in very, very interesting ways. And we're actually in the process of working on an album that will be released in about a year called Lung Powered, which sounds equal parts like metal. And, but I think often there's a lot of air that's involved, or different ways of working with air. You'll hear it a little bit tonight in David Smooke's piece, actually. There's a little bit of microtonal work in that piece. There's some very cool clarinet, some multiphonics that you have.
Yeah.
And there's the use of some very beautiful air sounds. What else?
I mean, you were asking about like what you wouldn't hear.
What
Yeah,
you won't get to hear.
What you won't hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of a big list. Just not that you're like missing out by coming to this concert because it's gonna be great, but that there's like a long list of different things that we've done. I mean, they've all done different kinds of multiphonics, singing into the instruments or doing lip multiphonics in the brass, writing. I do overtone singing of various kinds.
Done some like heavy very
Extremely microtonal
extremely
stuff.
microtonal stuff.
Yeah. Stuff with chopsticks.
Yeah, playing our instruments as percussion instruments rather than blowing into them.
Yeah.
Yeah, check out the website.
Thank you guys for your questions. I'm gonna let Jeff and Carlos and Andy will take a little break, and then in like 15 minutes, you will see some of these extended techniques and more, and they'll talk about the show during the show,
Great.
and we'll take it from there. But thank you guys for joining us on the series.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep.